Hey superstars, welcome to the Get Rich Without Being a Bitch podcast, and I am your host, Vanessa for this journey. We're going to be challenging some stereotypes, shattering glass ceilings, really looking at what it takes to live richly and to design a business that's going to support the life that you really want to be living. I'm going to be sharing lots of tips, tools, and strategies along the way, and I can't wait for you to join me on this journey. Hey superstars, welcome back to another episode of Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. I was chatting with a dear client recently, and we were examining her sales process. And she's doing really well. She's got some fantastic opportunities in the pipeline, and probably more than she's ever had at this point in time. But she said, I'd still love to be closing more deals, Vanessa. What is it that I seem to have, a good lot of opportunities and not closing as many, or I find myself in these constant cycles of follow-up and renegotiating. I want to share with you the one thing that we found that really started to shift. It's made a huge change for her, and that's led her to closing more sales recently. And it might not be what you think it is. One of the things we notice, so whenever somebody says to me, hey, I'm having challenges with this, I always want to dig into it, right? Well, how many sales conversations have you had? Tell me what they sound like. Do you have a written process for your sales conversations? Are you recording them? Are you listening back to them? Do you hear where your energy is off, right? What happens when a client comes to you and says, hey, I just want to know the price of X? How do you respond? So I dig into a lot of things because I've got to find out what's going wrong. And again, with a lot of my clients and private clients, they will even send me their sales conversations, right? So I can hear in real time and then analyze and give them some feedback as to where I believe the gaps are and some of those very practical things they can do to change. Well, as we started to dig into this, one of the things we noticed, well, there were many things, but I think that there were the really important where we had to shift things is any conversation didn't have really a very, very clear start to it. So there was no leadership at the beginning of those conversations around how might we work together? What are some of the problems that you've got? Tell me more about that. What's the vision for changing this? All of those good things that can come into a sales conversation. So there was no leadership from the beginning, which meant that there was no structure and no framework, right? That's a big no-no because if you don't have a structure and a framework for selling, you will always be at the whim of your prospect's method for buying, right? And you will default to that. So you're not now in charge in your sales conversations. So that was my first thing that I was listening for was, okay, how does this start? Because many times it's not that we lose the sale at the end. Many people mistakenly think, oh, I wasn't very good at closing or I wasn't very good at overcoming the objections. I like to look way back at the beginning, like how was it set up that actually contributed to this? Because we need to make some of those changes like further downstream or further upstream, whichever way our stream is flowing. So that was the first thing. And then energetically, as I started to listen, it became blindingly obvious that my client had entered the friend zone on her sales calls. And instead of being there as the expert with really owning her value and her expertise and bringing some authority and leadership to the calls, she was all of a sudden coming across as very nicey, very friendly, kind of laughing along, joking. Just again, the whole energy was as if I was frankly trying to make a friend and, perhaps organize my next social with this person. I said, I can see exactly what's happening in this conversation. Like you are being overly nice. They have taken leadership and you haven't. And you are just kind of on a back foot here trying to people please, right? It's like you're trying to be pleasant and nice the whole time. I said, you've entered the friend zone in your sales calls. And she said, oh my God, that is exactly what's happened here, Vanessa. I can totally see it. Now you've pointed it out. She said, that's exactly the energy that I'm coming with. I am here, really to be friendly, to be nice, kind of hoping they like me, hoping that that's enough to get the sales. But I am not following a process and really owning my expertise and doing the discovery that I really need to and should be doing on those calls. And then making a very, very clear offer to work together when I know I can solve their problem. And frankly, I believe I can solve it the best. I don't know anybody that does this better than me. Like, she's so confident in what she does, yet it doesn't come through because of this friendliness, right? This kind of, I'm going to be nice. I'm trying to be liked here. And this is so important, right? The energy that you come from in your sales calls, honestly, is often more important than the questions you ask and what you say, because it's seeping through everything. And it can be, unconsciously we're sowing seeds in the prospect mind that perhaps you can be walked all over, perhaps you can be pushed around, perhaps they start to dictate things. They will dictate the pricing, they'll dictate how it works. You'll just give in to that, right? And what we don't realize is there can be just this lack of respect that happens there. Sometimes those are the very same prospects that you give into, you make all of these concessions for, and they still don't buy. And you wonder why. And it's often the case because they really don't see you as the credible expert, right? You've been so nice, kind of people pleasing and friendly on a call that all of a sudden that you've put doubt into their mind as to your ability to really help them and lead them. So looking at this through the energy of, where do you come from, right, in those sales conversations? And I always say we have to come from a place of, not selling for a start. We are here to serve. We're here to serve the prospect in front of us. And frankly, your job is to find out if they have a problem that you can help with, to find out the impact and the cost of that problem, how it's rippling out through their lives or through their businesses, right? Whatever it is that you deal with. How is it that they want it to be different? Perhaps what have they tried so far? Where have they been frustrated, right? But ideally, what are those outcomes that they're looking for? And what do they really need help with? Okay, that is your job in discovery, is to answer those questions and not come from a friendly place. So coming back to my client, when we dug in a little bit deeper, so we've gone through and now, we're working on her sales process and the energy that she comes from and different frameworks. And again, I'm giving you a tip here. You do need a framework for selling, all right? Again, otherwise you will go off track and be all over the place. And I'm going to come back to that in another podcast because there's lots of really good stuff to dig into. But in this particular case, she said, light bulb moment. I've got to come at this from the, caring expert, but I'm not here to be friends with these prospects. I am here to be a professional, and that's the energy that I've got to come from and really demonstrate that I can help them. So as we were, digging into this, there was something else that was on my mind, right? Niggling away. And I said, she was talking about a couple of upcoming opportunities that she had. And something compelled me to ask about these opportunities. And one of them, the minute I asked her about it, she was like, like the shoulders slumping, energy draining. And she said, the thing is, Vanessa, I said yes to this. Now I've got to get on a plane. I've got to fly across country. I've got to deliver. It's going to take 3 days out of my life, out of my business. Yes, I'm being paid. Whatever it was she was being paid, it wasn't too shabby. But she was like, just the thought, though, of having to do all of this, and I really don't want to. And I said, well, is there a way that we can actually, back out of this? And is there a different way to deliver? Like, just because it's on the table now, does it have to be that way? And then we discovered that it was back to that friend zone. She had negotiated this previously to this conversation when she had been in the friend zone. And you know what? What she'd missed is that this prospect had actually said to her that she could deliver her session virtually. They had never even said to her that she needed to get on a plane. She needed to be there in person, schlep across the country, have hotel nights. Yes, they did agree to pay her travel. But frankly, for the amount that she's worth and the amount she was getting paid, it was not adding up. They had never, ever even asked for it. But because she was coming from the friend zone at the time, she had offered it, right? Put it on the table. And apparently, she kind of giggled to me then because she was like, God, now I'm really busted. I've seen how this shows up in my business. I see where this pattern is. And she said, they didn't even ask me. And there I am selling them. Oh no, I'll be there in person. Anyway, suffice that to say, things are never in stone and we can always go back and renegotiate. And with that, we crafted an email right then and there on our coaching call for her to renegotiate how she was going to be delivering. They were completely okay with it. She took back 3 days of her life. She was still paid well and she didn't have to schlep across the country, right? But the big lesson there was being in the friend zone with selling, could be costing you sales, really could be, because you're losing credibility and authority and positioning, which is so important. But not only that, are you actually volunteering yourself for things you really then don't want to deliver later on down the line because you've got a desire to be liked, right? And that people pleasing starts to get in the way. I really want you to think through this because changing it will be a game changer for you, your business, and your sales, and living richly. As always, please like or comment, share this podcast with some of your friends in business. You have other women that really need to know that this content is available for them and that there are other ways to be living richly, living life on your terms, and frankly, without ending up feeling burnt out and bitchy. I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.